Good afternoon and welcome to African Economy. I am your host, Wang Fonwood, and now the top stories. South Africa on track to extend GDP growth streak for third quarter. Kenya in talks with China to convert dollar loans into yuan and bid to ease fiscal pressure. Construction begins on East Africa's first ever cross-border SGR worth $2.15 billion plus. We'll also look at the top 10 African countries with the lowest diesel prices in August 2025. Kenya in talks with China to convert dollar loans into yuan in a bid to ease fiscal pressure. Kenya is negotiating with China to convert part of its dollar-denominated loans into yuan and extend repayment terms in a bid to ease pressure on state finances, according to Treasury Secretary John Mbadi. The East African nation spends about $1 billion annually servicing its debts to China, its largest bilateral creditor. Mbadi said that switching repayments from dollars to China's yuan could slash interest cost by almost half, while lengthening the tenor would free up much-needed fiscal space. Payments and loans from the Export-Imports Bank of China are expected to account for roughly a quarter of external debt servicing in the fiscal year through June 2025. Meanwhile, as of March, Kenya's external debt stood at $40.5 billion, of which $14.4 billion was owed to the World Bank, $7.52 billion to Eurobond investors, and $5.4 billion to China. Kenya, seeking to ease strained public finances, is turning to its citizens abroad with plans to issue a diaspora bond worth between $250 million and $500 million. The government hopes to raise as much as $4.8 billion through the program, according to Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi. East Africa has initiated construction on a $2.15 billion cross-border railway spanning Tanzania and Burundi. Tanzanian and Burundian leadership emphasized its role in boosting connectivity and unlocking economic potential. Completion is targeted for 2030, marking a milestone in bilateral infrastructure collaboration for the region. The foundation stone was laid by Tanzanian Prime Minister Kassim Majaliwa, marking a milestone in regional integration and transport modernization. Prime Minister Majaliwa assured citizens that work would begin on schedule, stressing the railway's potential to transform regional trade and travel. The South African arm of Japanese automaker Isuzu Motors is positioning itself as a manufacturing hub for commercial trucks on the continent, part of a strategy to boost production volumes and deepen the use of locally sourced parts. Billy Tom, president and CEO of Isuzu Motors South Africa, said that he has been in discussions with Japan regarding the relocation of more production to Africa. Isuzu has already run successful trials of locally building truck bodies, though it still imports some from China and the Middle East. While export volumes for trucks remain small, Isuzu already ships pickups to more than 30 countries in Africa. Some say the company is targeting West Africa as its starting point for scaling up trucks export. Across Africa, the price of diesel frequently determines the speed of daily life. A slight increase may raise food costs, halt transportation systems, and squeeze struggling enterprises, whilst a decrease can suddenly relieve financial stress for millions. That is why low diesel prices have an outsized impact, influencing not only fuel affordability, but also the overall economic and social stability of entire countries. One of the most immediate advantages of cheap diesel is lower transportation expenses. Lower diesel costs make it cheaper to carry agricultural products, raw materials, and manufactured commodities between regions in nations where road transit is primary mode of transportation. This not only stabilizes food prices, but also enhances market access for small farmers and dealers, therefore bolstering local economies. For a country that relies largely on dependable power to maintain its people and businesses, having access to diesel at reasonable cost promotes consistency in energy supply and prevents large-scale blackouts. With that said, here are the top 10 African countries with the lowest diesel prices in August 2025. Top on the list is Central African Republic. Second is Malawi. Third is Zimbabwe, which ranked 44th with $1.550. Fourth is Cameroon. Fifth is Seychelles. Sixth is Sierra Leone. Seventh is Guinea, which ranks 53rd with $1.383. The eighth on the list is Ghana. Nine is Senegal, and the last is Burundi, who ranks 60th with $1.331. South Africa's economy likely grew for a third consecutive quarter, driven by rebounds in manufacturing and mining, though new U.S. tariffs threaten to derail momentum. Economists surveyed by Bloomberg between August 8 and 13 forecast our 0.4% expansion in the second quarter, up from 0.1% in the previous 3 months. Gains in mining were supported by demand-driven commodity price increases. The outlook darkened on August 7 when U.S. President Donald Trump imposed fresh tariffs on several trading partners, including a 30% levy on South African export, one of the steepest globally. Already burdened with one of the world's highest unemployment rate and sluggish growth, South Africa's fragile economy now faces fresh strain from newly imposed tariffs. In response, South Africa is moving to offset the impact of Washington's 30% export tariffs by deepening trade ties with China. Under a new agreement, Beijing will initially import 5 varieties of South African stone fruit, a deal expected to unlock a lucrative entry into one of the world's fastest-growing consumer market. Still in South Africa is reconsidering its Black Economic Empowerment (BEE) policies related to foreign satellite internet providers. The proposed changes suggest allowing equity equivalence programs instead of mandatory 30% Black ownership. SpaceX supports these reforms, which might facilitate its operations in the country without ceding ownership. Opposition voices criticize the potential policy shift, alleging favoritism towards wealthy foreign interest. Zimbabwean banks reported major disruptions to a key payments channel after the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe suffered a network failure, which it is trying to resolve. Lenders, including Central African Building Society Limited, the nation's largest mortgage provider and a unit of South Africa's Old Mutual Limited, told clients that the real-time gross settlements platform was down. The RBZ, which acknowledged a technical challenge that could delay some banking services, has struggled to restore full operations. Its website remained offline throughout Tuesday, leaving the official dollar exchange rates for the local gold-backed ZIG currency unavailable. Large retailers, local councils and other institutions that depend on RBZ websites for exchange rates guidance to set prices were also affected. The Zimbabwe Stock Exchange was unable to settle trades. Lawrence Nyazima, president of the Bankers Association of Zimbabwe, said the outage of the main system had disrupted payments across the market, though some services have since been restored. Cameroon's 42,000-barrel payday refinery shuttered since devastating fire in 2019 is now set for rehabilitation under a new government-backed plan. The recovery program named Paras 24 aims to restructure and repay the facility within a designated 24-month period, targeting a 2027 operational restart. Reviving the refinery is projected to decrease import dependency, stabilize domestic energy prices, and bolster Cameroon's role in regional energy market. The facility, considered a cornerstone for Central Africa's energy supply chain, is expected to resume operations by 2027 through a restructuring and recovery program approved this month. Officials stress that government support will be essential to overcoming the refinery's long-standing financial and operational challenges. We will go on a break, and when we're back, African Economies continues. Stay tuned. Thank you so much for staying tuned. South Africa, Morocco lead Africa's vehicle production. South Africa and Morocco remain Africa's top vehicle producers, according to the International Organization of Motor Vehicle Manufacturers. South Africa manufactured 755 vehicles in 2024, a 5% year-on-year decline that placed it 20th worldwide. The figure falls short of the 784,509 unit target set under the South African Automotive Master Plan 2035. Morocco, by contrast, produced 559,645 vehicles, a 5% increase that ranked its 23rd globally. Emerging markets are strengthening the position as automotive hubs, supported by rising incomes, regional trade deals, and supply chain shift away from high-cost countries. Throughout Africa, the cost of fuel is one of the most powerful influences determining everyday living and economic reality. When petrol costs rise, it has an immediate and far-reaching impact on consumers, companies, and government alike. Rising fuel prices raise production costs for businesses, particularly those in transportation, farming, and manufacturing, and frequently drive enterprises to pass the burden onto consumers, resulting in an inflammatory are disturbing. In remote locations with no public transportation, high gasoline prices isolate residents, making it difficult to access healthcare, market, and schools. Workers in cities are spending an increasing percentage of their pay merely to travel to work, reducing disposable income and exacerbating poverty. Several African nations have experienced protests in recent years as residents oppose fuel price increases, which are frequently tied to subsidy cuts or currency devaluation. For Africa, where transportation and energy are critical to development, finding ways to keep gasoline inexpensive through refining capacity, alternative energy, and efficient distribution is not just an economic, but also a social imperative. With that said, here are the top 10 African countries with the highest fuel prices in August 2025. Top on the list is Central Africa Republic, which ranked 23rd. Second is Senegal, with the fuel price at $1.752, which ranked 32nd. Third is Zimbabwe, which ranked 48th with $1.560. Fourth on the list is Ivory Coast, which ranked 51st with $1.513. The fifth is Burkina Faso, sixth is Cameroon, seventh on the list is Malawi, eighth is Kenya, and the last is Morocco, which ranked 59th with $1.428. Let's look at the US dollars against other African countries' currency. The US dollars against Nigerian naira is at 1,535.920, a depreciative point of 1.240, with a percentage of a negative 0.08. The US dollars against South African rand is at 17,668.78, with a good appreciative point of 0.0288. The US dollars against Zambian kwacha is at 23.1200. The US dollars against Egyptian pound is at 48.4700. The US dollars against Algerian dinar is at 129.818, a depreciative point of 0.085, with a percentage of a negative 0.07. The US dollars against Angolan kwanza is at 918.610, an appreciative point of 1.610, a percentage of 0.18. Lastly, on African economy, Uganda's Ministry of Foreign Affairs have announced the third country deportation agreement less than 24 hours after insisting no such arrangements existed. Reports earlier in the week suggested that Washington had concluded a deal with Kampala to transfer some deportees to Uganda as part of President Donald Trump's immigration policy, which has sought to relocate migrants with rejected asylum claims or questionable documentation to third countries. The Ugandan government, in a statement released by State Minister for Foreign Affairs Henry Onyem Okello, initially dismissed the report but has now acknowledged the agreement, while stressing that individuals with criminal records or unaccompanied minors will not be accepted and that preference will be given to African nationals. The agreement follows President Donald Trump's immigration policy, which has included the deportation of convicted felons and migrants with questionable documents to third countries. The Ugandan government has outlined strict conditions under which it will receive migrants under its new agreements with the United States. According to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Uganda will only take in third country nationals who have been denied asylum in the U.S. and are unwilling to return to their countries of origin. And that brings us to today's edition of African Economy. Thank you so much for watching. I am Wang Fon Wotab. Good afternoon.